Were you always starting with midterm rentals or did you do short-term rentals before?
Yeah, so I started with short term and then I actually stumbled upon midterm rentals when COVID in March or April of 2020. At that time, when COVID hit, I only had 4 arbitrage leases and I was doing short term rentals. And actually, 2 things happened around that time. So in January of 2020, the city of Buffalo passed a short term rental ordinance and they greatly restricted short term rentals. And they actually made all of my units, all of my apartment, all of my units were no longer qualified to do short-term rent, mostly because they were in apartment buildings and they made it so they passed the ordinance so that you can't do short-term rentals in buildings that are 5 units or more. So any like commercial buildings, you can't do short-term rentals. All of mine were in like commercial buildings. And so they gave us a couple months to go into compliance. So during that time, I was like looking for a solution. I wasn't ready to shut down my business. Like, dude, I know there's a way to get around this. How am I going to get around this ordinance? I remember I actually printed out the ordinance. It wasn't that long, maybe 10 or 12 pages. And I read it over half a dozen times, trying to find like loopholes or trying to figure out like, how am I going to get around this? And so I didn't really know how I was going to get around it yet. Then COVID happens. All my bookings had canceled. So I had empty calendars. I had 4 rents and I did not have savings to pay those 4 rents. So I was freaking out a bit. And then I got lucky in a way that I got in a booking over Airbnb, a 2-month booking from a travel nurse on Airbnb and at one of my properties. And that got me interested. I was like, holy smokes, like a 2-month booking. Like I had never even heard of that at that point. For me, a 10-day booking was like probably the longest had at that point. And so I was like, holy smokes, 2 months. That's crazy. Wow. I wonder if there's more ups. There's got to be you know what I mean? There's got to be more of this. And so I started looking into it and I ended up changing my strategy. I moved all my Airbnb listings to 30-night minimum. And then it also, when I got that 2-month booking over Airbnb, something clicked where I was like, hold on, the short-term rental ordinance that the city of Buffalo just passed, they define a short-term rental as 30 days or less. So that that I just got is it's legal. It doesn't violate the short-term rental ordinance. And so I was right. And so it just clicked. And then from there, I just switched on my strategy, decided, okay, I'm going to focus on this midterm thing. Got all 4 of those properties booked by midterm tenants by the end of that month. So I think that was April of 2020. So by the end of April 2020, I had all my places booked with midterm tenants. I was able to pay my leases and still make a profit. And then once they were all booked, I was like, dude, twiddling my thumbs. I'm like, what do I do now? Everything's booked, as opposed to doing the short-term rentals. There was constant turnover and everything. And so that's how I stumbled upon midterm rentals. And I've just stuck with, I just decided that's what I'm going to focus on moving forward.
Got it. Yeah. And so are all your units now midterm or do you do hybrid or any short-term?
I have one that I co-host that's primarily short-term. That's like a bigger, like a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. And then I do some hybrid in between some of my midterm bookings for ones where it's allowed and I can do it. But I'd say 90% of my strategy is midterm rentals.
Okay. Very cool. And what's actually, us is first. Obviously, the strategy shifted a little bit. How about platforms? Where are you getting most of your bookings from? Yeah, if you can, it's probably a lot to cover.
So it's actually still about almost 50% right now. I was just looking at it the other day. It's almost 50% right now over Airbnb with a 30-day minimum. Still where I'm getting just lack of midterm tenants. There's just so much traffic on Airbnb. It's not always. I have a love-hate relationship, I'll say, with Airbnb, but man, you can't deny the amount of traffic that they have and people that they have that are also willing to pay, right? And then besides that, it would be Furnish Finder is number 2. I do get some leads, some bookings, some leads through Zillow, but not too many. And then besides that, it's just through building relationships, referrals, repeats, and realtors, all the R's. Referrals, repeats, realtors, and also travel nurse recruiters.
Okay.
I have this with lots of recruiters that send travel nurses because a lot of my properties that I do are studio apartments, affordable studio apartments. A lot of them are walking distance to our downtown medical campus. They're walking distance to the hospitals. So they work really well for the travel nurses. I'm literally just renting apartments that are walking distance to the hospitals, furnishing them, and then subleasing them to the travel nurses. And then I built up relationships with the travel nurse recruiters. So when a recruiter sends a travel nurse to Buffalo, they'll just give that nurse my contact info and I'll help them find housing.